Good evening. Tonight we'd like to call the November 28th, 2017 City of Peoria City Council meeting to order. I'd like to do a thank you to our listening audience, H. Wayne Wilson, WCBU, and all of those following us on Channel 22 tonight. And thank you for all of those that are in our audience tonight with us as well in person. Madam Clerk, the microphones are open for roll call.
Councilmember Akeson. Here. Councilmember Sear. Here. Councilmember Grayeb. Here. Councilmember Jensen. Here. Councilmember Montalongo. Here. Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Euler. Here. Councilmember Riggenbach. Here. Chairman Pro Tem Ruckriegel.
Here.
And Councilmember Turner. You have a quorum present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, we'd ask everybody to rise for a moment of prayer or reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We've got 4 proclamations tonight. 2 are on the agenda and 2 have been added since then. And first up, we would like to call America's Gold Star Families and the Heroes Banner Program. Whereas, beginning in spring 2018, America's Gold Star Families will sponsor the Hometown Hero Banner Project. Each banner will feature a picture of a fallen hero who lost their life while serving for the United States Armed Forces, or who is listed as missing in action, MIA. And whereas the City of Peoria will partner with America's Gold Star Families to hang these banners in our city, banners will be displayed annually from spring through fall. And whereas the Hometown Heroes Banner Project's mission is to serve as a reminder that freedom is not free, but is paid with the ultimate sacrifice for our fallen service, men and women. This project also honors the families of the fallen, acknowledging their sacrifices as well. Now, therefore, I, Jim Artis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby recognize Hometown Hero Banner Project in Peoria, Illinois, dated this 28th day of November, 2017. Addie, would you like to join us and say a couple of words?
Thank you very much to Mayor Artis, the City of Peoria, Patrick, the City Council members for always being so supportive of our families of the fallen. There's a few of them here with us tonight. I'd like to introduce them. On the end here is Don and Robin. They lost their son, Philip. Kathy lost her only child, Jordan. And Kim lost her husband, Paul. We're very excited to be partnering with the City of Peoria and to start a new tradition that honors our fallen for all to see. These banners are beautiful, color vinyl. They cost $250. The criteria is loss of life while serving active duty or missing in action. And the registration will expire, but then it immediately reopens for the next batch. So if you don't know someone but you'd like to sponsor one, I can connect you with families. We're doing that. We're asking individuals, families, organizations, businesses, corporations to consider sponsoring them. We're going to put them on Water Street, and when Water Street fills up, we're going to find another place in the city. I'm proud of our city for taking this initiative and to be an example, perhaps to other communities, even other states, on how we can effectively honor our fallen. And I brought one for you to see. The same.
Patty, and please extend to all of the Gold Star Family Organization our continued gratitude for all the work that you and each of the members do each day of the year. I know that it's has become an important piece in our city with the name recognitions on some of the areas that we drive to make sure that we never forget the sacrifices that allow us to have the freedoms every day. Thank you very much for your work. Next up, we have ABG Retirement Planning Services and their Best in Retirement Business Award. Whereas ABG Retirement Plan Services received the Charles Schwab & Company Best in Retirement Business Award at the National Impact Conference held in Chicago's McCormick Place on November 16, 2017. And whereas the Best in Retirement Business Award recognizes ABG Retirement Plan Services for their leadership in the retirement industry and for their dedication to those they serve. And whereas, as part of the award, Schwab will make a donation of $15,000 to the nonprofit organization chosen by the award recipients, ABG Retirement Plan Services requested the donation to be split between two organizations, Salvation Army, Heartland Division, and Peoria Public Schools Foundation. The team at ABG Retirement Plan Services has supported the Salvation Army as volunteers and through fundraising efforts for many years. The second donation recipient, the Adopt a School program, is a partnership between Peoria Public Schools and local businesses that encourages students to enrich their educational experiences. The firm recently adopted Roosevelt Magnet School through this program. And whereas ABG Retirement Plan Services has been helping employers provide meaningful retirement benefits since 1967, they've grown from a firm of 6 to become a regional service office of one of the largest retirement plan administration organizations in the country. And whereas ABG Retirement Plan Services dedicated team of over 80 individuals work hard to carry out the firm's mission, helping people save for retirement. From their downtown Peoria offices, they handle over 600 retirement plans, which represents over 40,000 plan members and $3.2 billion in assets. Now, therefore, I, Jim Artis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby recognize ABG Retirement Plan Services and their Best in Retirement Business Award in Peoria, Illinois, dated this 28th day of November, 2017.
Linda and I get to stand here and accept the reward, but really the people who made the reward possible are many of them are sitting here. So would those of you ABGs stand up and just let yourselves be recognized, because this is really your award for the great work that you do. It's great to be a small business in Peoria, serving clients throughout the country. We appreciate very much the recognition that the mayor and the council give us.
And thank you for calling Peoria home. Our third proclamation today will be for the Community Festival of Nativities. Whereas December 25th is the day Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ as Christmas Day, and whereas the story of the Nativity and the events surrounding the birth of Jesus are important in religious celebrations at Christmas, and whereas the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church, and All Saints Greek Orthodox Church have joined together to present the Community Festival of Nativities. And whereas this unique exhibit aims to provide a peaceful place for individuals and families to reflect upon Christ's sacred birth this Christmas season. Visitors will see over 600 nativities on display and enjoy performances from local musicians. And whereas the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is hosting this year's event at their place of worship, 3700 West Reservoir Boulevard, on December 1st and 3rd from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and from noon to 6 on Sunday. Now, therefore, I, Jim Artis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby recognize the Community Festival of Nativities in Peoria, Illinois, dated this 28th day of November, 2017. Thank you.
I am chairing the event this year, and we welcome everyone. It's a free event to the community, and it's great for 2-year-olds to 100-year-olds. And one update is we've surpassed the 600 nativities tonight. We're setting up this evening, and we've gone up to 800. So if it's something you would enjoy with your families, we encourage you to come out, and we're thrilled to be partnered with the St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church and the All Saints Greek Orthodox Church. It's been wonderful to work with people from different churches in a united goal and something that we all hold very dear to our hearts. And so we invite everyone to come and see what it's about and enjoy the music and enjoy the children's activity. We hope to see you there.
And our fourth proclamation tonight goes to Dream Girls Mentoring Program. Whereas Dream Girls Mentor Program, Inc. is a nonprofit organization that offers mentoring and empowerment workshops to girls from 7 to 15 years of age. And whereas the abundance of programs focus on a variety of topics, including communication, leadership skills, financial management, building healthy relationships, and growing self-esteem, while all of these are designed to help build confidence and character, there are also art classes, field trips, movie nights, and social events. And whereas Dream Girls Mentor Program, Inc. now offers a food pantry that is open to the public every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 3023 Northeast Adams. And whereas Dream Girls Mentor Program, Inc. encourages community involvement and is looking for mentors, volunteers, and donations to the pantry. Now, therefore, I, Jim Artis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby recognize Dream Girls Mentor Program, Inc. in Peoria, Illinois, dated this 28th day of November, 2017.
Thanks for having me. I'm like super nervous. I'm just really excited to be getting this award. And that is it. I got to get back to work. I got to work on Dream Girls. Thank you again for having me.
Councilmember Grab.
Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting held on November 14, 2017, as well as the special City Council meetings held on November 21, 17, as printed.
Thank you. Seconded. by Councilman Sear. Cast your ballots. All right. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. We are at a township meeting right now. 17-349 is a communication from the town board with a request to approve monthly anticipated expenditures for December 2017 for the town of the city of Peoria.
Thank you. Can I get a motion?
Yeah.
Councilman Grab, seconded by Sear. There you go. Sorry about that. Get your microphone on now. Sorry about that.
To approve the anticipated expenditures for December of 17 for the town of the city of Peoria.
Okay. Seconded by Sear. All right. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I guess. I just have a couple comments and sort of direction or questions for the city manager. Since this item is up, I just would like to see us do a more in-depth analysis of what?
This is a township item. The city has nothing to do with this. I think
Okay.
the question should be either directed to the township officials that are here in the audience who may be able to work on that, or it would be, but it's not a city matter, so.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just bring up this point since it's related to the township. I don't know if there is any township officials in the audience or not. I would like, as we look at this budget for the township or the report on the monthly anticipated expenditures, to just make the next year, before we get very close to the budget, we do a more in-depth analysis about what it would mean to consolidate the township with the city, giving an opportunity to the public to get input and review the analysis and the study, so we can make sure that we're operating as efficiently as possible. This has been a difficult budget season for us, and I did bring this up, although I think that we could have done a better job analyzing this, so I'd like to get ahead of it and see if this is something that we should consider in the future, because I think we're going to continue to need to work more efficiently, and I think consolidating the township may be a real possibility for us to save some money and to work more efficiently. Thank you.
All right. First and a second, and we'll cast your ballots. Yes. Go ahead. Yes. Go ahead.
We do have at least one township official here. She sits to my right. She is the city clerk. I think we may have, I don't have my glasses in here. I think we have Max Schlafly here as well, supervisor of assessments. And you have the liaison here, Ty. And if we know in advance what you would like, we're always happy to provide it. And we can have, a complete, total presentation which can put to rest once and for all that there are efficiencies, A, or that there aren't efficiencies, B, with some dissolution of township government. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments?
And I appreciate that. Thank you, Councilor Grab. I'd like to see it done, I guess, maybe by the township and the city together, so that it's complete and it maybe is more objective, and not just one entity doing the study and not the other. So I appreciate your comments, and I just hope that this is something that we as a council and as a township can look at more closely and well ahead of the budget time with a report back and a full-blown analysis on what it would do if we were to consolidate and if it would truly save us money. So thank you.
Councilman Graham?
Yeah, I would signal it, but it says yes or no here. So, Manager, did you not put out a memo some time ago in reference to your first blush, and maybe not an extensive analysis, thoughts about the feasibility of cost savings for township consolidation?
We did include in a budget report back some information pertaining to the consolidation effort and trying to match up some of the positions within the city government and how that might look if we were to have that consolidation occur.
And perhaps we could refamiliarize, not to say that this is the alpha omega of the discussion, but if we could get this memo back out to refresh the memories of the town trustees as to what your thoughts were then I think, it would not be like we haven't already looked into this or discussed this, but we're always happy to do it in more detail. Because we certainly know that we need to operate our government as efficiently as possible. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we will open the voting. Cast your ballots. All right. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
We're at the consent agenda. 17-350 is a communication from the city manager and community development director with a request to approve and accept the following. A is a down payment assistance grant from Greater Peoria LISC in the amount of $100,000 as part of the Illinois Attorney General Grant Partners for a Better East Bluff initiative. And B is an ordinance amending City of Peoria 2017 amended annual budget relating to the capital fund to recognize the receipt of a down payment assistance grant from Greater Peoria LISC for the same project. A 17-351 is a report from City Treasurer Patrick Nichtine for the month of October 2017 with a request to receive and file. And 17-352 is a communication from the City Manager and Finance Director Comptroller with a request to receive and file the month ended October 31, 2017 unaudited financial report. And that completes your consent agenda.
Thank you. Any items to remove from the consent agenda tonight? All right. There being none, cast your ballots. Oh, I'm sorry. Move for approval. Riggenbach, seconded by Councilmember Moore. Cast your ballots. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
We're at the first reading of 17-353 is a communication from the City Manager and Community Development Director with a request from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff for a first reading of an ordinance amending the Unified Development Code related to signs.
Thank you. Councilmember Graham.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Director Black is here.
He is. I think he's going to be stepping up here to the podium.
This is what happens when I don't wear my glasses, Director Black. The only thing I think that's probably much more contentious than sign rules would be regulating people's pets. This is almost a third rail, and I do believe that it's not quite ready for prime time tonight.
Councilman, what I would like to do is, if the council would provide it, have a receive and file for this evening, and set this item for the first regular meeting in January of 2018. And that way I can provide a better presentation that hopefully will encompass the the entire issue of temporary signs.
Thank you, Director Black, and I would like to make a further comment, but I would move to receive and file.
Okay. Second by Councilmember Jensen. Okay, and open for your
Director
comment.
Black, I have observed with much glee the smaller sized real estate signs in the second district. And I know the manager, you and I discussed some of these eternally present, huge signs that almost dwarf some of the buildings that appear in some of our neighborhoods. And I'd just like to give credit where credit is due. Manager, do you want the credit, or does Director Black deserve it? Because, you know, it's made a big difference. And my constituents certainly appreciate the lack of visual pollution that seems to be there eternally. And I do know also we have the issue of signs that are eternally up for maybe future vacancies that dot some neighborhoods and that never seem to go down. And I think I've engaged you and maybe Corporation Counsel Leist and the manager and what the legality is of that. And if we could craft any type of ordinance that would put some restriction on 6 or 7, I'll just say yellow signs, all in a row, week after week, month after month, constituting a lot of visual pollution. So I think we've made some headway. Director Black or Manager Urick, if you'd like to comment on the legal issues involved. My constituents are constantly asking me about this.
Councilman, I think the specifics that you brought up will be the core of the discussion at the first council meeting of next year, because that really is the question that is before the council. And just in summary, based upon a somewhat recent Supreme Court ruling, what local governments can do is they have to have a very generic approach to temporary signs. So you can determine the number of signs, the location of the signs, the size of the sign, placement of the sign. But beyond that, there can't be different regulations for different types of temporary signs. So what I'm going to do is in the next few weeks, I will send some background information to all of the city council, and we can make it available to the public so that the question is properly framed. And that way, in about 5 weeks, there can be a discussion to those specific points. And ultimately, it comes down to what the city council wants signs to look like and communicate in the city of Peoria.
And Director, I certainly understand the need for signage, but for the life of me, I can't understand why a given business, when it has 6 or 7 buildings all in a row, can't create one nice sign with maybe the addresses and the phone number, instead of incurring the wrath and not the goodwill of the neighbors. And every time I go to a West Bluff Council meeting, it comes up, and every time I have to tell them, well, we're working on it, we're working on it. So I look forward to, I think, the January session about signs, everywhere signs. And thank you, Chairman Ruckriegel.
Thank you. All right, any other comments? There being none, cast your ballots. All right. That passes unanimously.
Yes, we're at regular business. 17-354 is a communication from the city manager with a request to approve the 2017 to 2032 strategic plan.
Councilmember Sear.
Thank you very much, Councilman Rodrigo. I'd like to make a motion to defer item 17-354, give everybody a chance to read this report that all of us spent at least 6 or 7 days putting together, and we just got the last few days, so I would like to defer for for a January meeting, or December or well, probably December meeting, please.
To the next December meeting?
Next December meeting, please.
Okay, we have a motion to defer. Got a second by Councilmember Jensen. All right.
Do you mean December 5th, or do you mean what would our regularly scheduled meeting be, the 12th? The 12th?
December 5th, I believe it's budget, correct? So probably December 12th would be great.
Cool. All right. Any other comments or questions? We've got a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. Motion to defer passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
We're at unfinished business. 17-345 is a communication from the city manager with a request to adopt an ordinance levying an addition to sales tax within the Westlake Special Service area.
Councilmember Montalongo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to defer this item to the first meeting in January.
Have a second? Councilmember Akison? Okay. Any discussion? There being none, please cast your ballots. All right. And that deferral passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Yes, I believe that there might be some more unfinished business.
Councilmember Montalongo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a few questions here for the city manager and/or the representative from Public Works. Earlier this week, I sent out some questions that I had about the combined sewer overflow or the stormwater utility that we have. And one of them was a policy for the stormwater, and we had some discussion about credits, and so we received today an outline of what that might look like here, and just wanted a chance for the city manager to make some comments on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some brief comments. Councilman Montalongo had asked if there, what was the kind of the policy outlining around the stormwater utility, and it was really defined, and we had presented to you in the first reading of the stormwater utility, the framework of what that policy looked like, and it really just states that the intent of the city is to establish a utility to manage and educate and plan for and inspect and enforce, protect, control, regulate, use, construct, maintain, and enhance our stormwater and wet weather systems throughout the city of Peoria. Within that, we then talked about how we were calculating that fee, which the stormwater utility fee would apply to every parcel of property in the city, whether it's currently taxable or not. Every parcel would apply to the stormwater utility. And so we calculate a billing unit, which is based on 1,000 square feet of impervious surface, and then that's applied across every parcel of property. The Public Works staff would look at each one of those parcels, and they would set up what that fee would be for each one of those parcels of property. It also meant that if there are sidewalks or golf cart paths or private streets or walking or bike paths that are on that property, that would be subject to the utility fee. What we've been working on, and I'm going to ask City Engineer Bill Lewis to talk a little bit about this, is a credit and incentive manual. Obviously, what we're trying to do as well is to encourage behavior that tries to retain stormwater on site and keep it from getting into the stormwater system itself, and then ultimately the public then has to maintain that. So we've been looking at trying to develop this credit manual. We've benchmarked ourselves against some other cities, and we're continuing to work on trying to finalize this. We gave you a hard copy of this evening. We'll make sure that we get an electronic version of this posted to our website so that it'll be up for the public to review. But if I could, I'd like to just ask City Engineer Bill Lewis to talk a little bit about the credit manual and what's in it and what it would entail.
Thank you. If you turn the first couple pages, what you guys will see in this manual is there's a lot of definitions. And by nature, this document is a little bit technical, so there are a lot of definitions. I would expect there'd be some questions from you guys once you had a chance to absorb all the information in here. We'd be happy to take those at any time in the next couple of days. But as we go through some of this, if you turn to page, I guess it'd be page 8 of 20, where it starts to talk about the credit and incentive policies. There's specific differences in a credit and an incentive. The incentives are intended to be a one-time only disbursement of payment, where the credit is a reoccurring thing. So keep that in mind as you read through some of this, and the pages discuss all of those things in detail. There will be applications that will have to be submitted for the incentives and for the credits that the homeowners and property owners would have to apply for. On page, it'd be page 10 of 20. It does talk about the application fees, and it also talks about what the incentives and credits could be applied for. So, for instance, if you wanted to put a rain barrel up at your house, you can get an incentive for that. There's an application fee to apply for that as well. So there's a $5 application fee to apply for the rain barrel. But then if you look on the next page, on page 11, to get a rain barrel, you can get a $50 incentive for that rain barrel. You could have 2 rain barrels per household. Rain gardens are another thing that you can get an incentive for. And then the third thing in the incentive is the natural area maintenance. And if you look on page 13, we've put a paragraph in there that would apply to native prairies, original forest land, maintained bluffs. Some of those things, we realize that in Peoria, there's a large amount of land that would fall into that category. So we wanted to have some things in there for that as well. The next section of it talks about the credits. We can get credits for rate reduction, volume reduction, water quality, something that might be direct discharge to the river. And an interesting one is the education part of it. So, and we'll talk through some of this as we get through it. And then there's an innovation section for that as well. If you turn to the next page, it goes through all of these. One of the bigger differences with the credits, too, is to get these credits, they are very technical. They will require a licensed professional engineer to do some of these calculations and to be submitted that way. It's not something that a standard property owner could just do on their own. So it will require calculations and studies and things like that to get that up to where we would be able to accept something like that. And that's the same for the volume reduction and the improved water quality, all of that. Well, let's talk a little bit about the education part of it. I think it's very important that we are educating our younger kids with this. You know, this is something that's here today, and it's something that's relatively new across the country. I mean, stormwater retention, things like that have been going on for a long time, but it hasn't gotten the attention that it probably should until more recently. So getting kids today to learn about this type of stuff will only help us later in life when they're building their homes, and they will naturally do some of these things. So that's the hope with that, is that schools could turn this into an education forum for them. They can learn about the problems that we have here in the city, and then maybe by the time that they're adults, some of these problems would be, disappeared.
Mr. City
Really
Manager.
about all of it. Yeah, Councilman Montalongo, you have some questions.
I have just a couple questions here for City Manager.
Sure.
I guess. So when will the council be approving this policy?
So the stormwater utility is not planned to go into effect until June, and the ordinance would come back for you for approval, establishing the stormwater utility next week as part of the budget. But the credit manual is something that we could bring back for your approval after the council has approved the utility, but before it's actually goes into effect, because this then would afford actually the opportunity for some public input into this, allow for people to take a look at this, for us to present to you what the benchmarking looks like from what other communities are providing as far as credits go, and still have ample time for that to be adopted prior to the implementation of the utility.
Okay. And just like our other ordinances that we have, the city council will manage this and be able to make changes whenever needed.
This is a policy document that's referenced in the ordinance, but if the council wants to change the utility ordinance, that's council's purview to do so. Yeah.
And certainly just probably like every other district or any other council person, my concerns are with the cost for each property, and especially, I guess, around the, I have 3 shopping areas in my district, the Northwoods Mall, Westlake, and Glen Hollow, which will have to pay a hefty amount here. So this credit portion will be very important to them, as well as I did the calculation at Weaver Ridge Golf Course, and I know they have their own system in place that reuses water. I mean, for them to get water is really important, and so reusing the water to irrigate the golf course, they constantly reuse the water in that entire area. So it's all set up to feed that system. So I know that after talking to the owner at Weaver Ridge, this was something very concerning for him after seeing what the price tag was on that, which I think is about $10,000 a year when there's a declining golfing industry. And certainly I'm concerned about the other golf courses that are in my district or that are adjacent to the district, but most of those don't have a cart path that run through the entire golf course. When you start making those calculations for that strip, it's really, really expensive, and it's something that's not been planned for. So I'm glad we have some time yet to have our input on this policy that we will be adopting at some point in time. So thank you for answering my questions and providing this information.
Thank you, Councilmember Montalongo. Councilmember Grab.
Manager, how does this relate to the CSO potential settlement with the EPA?
Well, the stormwater utility, we've anticipated that's part of the funding stream for how we're going to be addressing all of our wet weather management throughout the city to pay for the maintenance of the CSO projects that we would be implementing as part of the compliance with that. So we're going to obviously need revenue to make that work. I think that we've seen other communities that have credits, not everybody avails themselves of those credits. I was just in Annapolis, Maryland over the weekend at a shopping center. There they had actually built in a rain garden in the middle of the parking lot to try and capture all of that stormwater runoff, and they were actively using that, and they were actively marketing it and talking about that. So if we can see that areas that have large parking lots can actually change their behavior and change the way that their parking lots drain, that may be another advantage that would come out of this, because that would defer some of that water actually getting into the public stormwater system. And so that's what you want to try and do, is encourage that type of adaptive change to the existing infrastructure we have to reduce the impact that would have. But, we'd be looking at a certain number of people that would take advantage of the credits and others may not, simply because they just have made that determination that it's not worth it.
Manager, do you see the city playing a role in advising entities or individuals, homeowners, how they can make the most of these credits and help do what we need to do to control this runoff? Or do you anticipate burgeoning cottage industry in the private sector of people offering their services? How do you see this playing out? And would the city be willing to extend that expertise to people or knowledge as to how they can best curtail very high expenses, as Councilmember Montalongo is worried about?
I agree. I think that I could see both. I could see us providing that guidance in council and the Public Works Department providing education to the public on what are those best practices that they can use to change their environment within their footprint to reduce the amount of runoff. But I also see that there's going to be an opportunity for industry or people in the private sector to step up and provide some guidance and assistance to the public as well.
And we actually have entities already ahead of the curve doing permeable work. Trinity Lutheran in the 2nd District, for example. I know Councilman Montalongo has a development that's done that and probably been one of the pioneers and so on and so forth, probably down in District 1. So it's good to see that people are trying to get ahead of the curve on this. I just think that, our hope is that as much as possible we don't have sky-high fees that people are going to have to pay, because the goal here isn't to be punitive. The goal is to contain the water, to meet some of the requirements. So I find Councilman Montalongo's line of reasoning helpful. And one last question. Will any of us in the room tonight, Esquire Leist, live to see an EPA settlement involving the city of Peoria?
Councilman Graham. I will say that I am still hopeful that at least a majority of us will survive.
Okay. Johnny Carson used to have a show, and he had the soothsayer on, but this has been out there for many years, 80s? And I think probably the best time to have this settled is now. And none of us want punitive damages or anything of that sort. So we are earnestly working with the EPA. I know staff has spent hours driving to, I think, Chicago and wherever, to get this resolved so we can get some of the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So it's not for lack of effort on your part, and Public Works Department's part, and the manager's part, city management, that we don't have that agreement in hand. I would like to think that 2018 we could get that agreement inked. But thank you, Mayor Ruckriegel.
Thank you. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And Councilman Montalongo, thank you for bringing these questions up again, because sometimes as we sit around the horseshoe talking about this and going back a couple years with the One Water Committee, we think everybody is aware of this as well. So we did a tremendous outreach with the One Water group in 2015, but let's face it, that's 2 years ago. So for all of you listening, this is the wake-up call, because this is happening. And Mr. Manager, if you could just, again, outline for us, and at next week's meeting, we will theoretically pass the ordinance that establishes the stormwater utility, which will set the rate.
That's correct. So at next week's meeting, we're going to try and wrap up all of the items pertaining to the budget. So there will be the cities and first we'll have the township's appropriation ordinance and the township's property tax levy ordinance. Then we'll have the city's appropriation ordinance and property tax levy ordinance. There will be the stormwater utility ordinance that will set the rate that we will utilize. There will be the second reading of the amusement tax ordinance, the second reading of the garbage fee ordinance, and then we'll have first readings of the fire revenues that were part of the discussion of raising some of the fire fees and the special events fees. I think we'll have those ready to go. So there'll be first readings of those that will then take those to the meeting, if council concurs, on December 12th for approval. So that'll tie up everything that was contemplated as part of the budget package.
And part of the ordinance establishing the stormwater utility clearly states that there will be credits and incentives available.
That is correct.
And to Councilman Montalongo's point, that is something that we can tweak anytime we want, but particularly since the first billing won't go out till July, we will have the time for public input and further discussion with the stakeholders.
That's correct.
And I would just applaud Public Works again, and Assistant Director Lewis, thank you for outlining this. As I've had discussion with school board members, for instance, they've been very concerned about the parking lots and playgrounds that they have. But this educational credit, how innovative is that to teach our kids? For each student, if I'm reading this right, and stop me if I'm wrong, for each student in those K through 12 educational institutions, if they provide stormwater education, they'll get a $5 credit for each student. So that's just one of the many things here that will help them mitigate that. So I think that's very creative and innovative, and I'm sure in the next couple months before those first bills go out, we'll hear from people with a lot of ideas, but let's face the reality that we're not going to be able to exempt anybody, or else it defeats the purpose, because everybody produces stormwater runoff, and that's the point of what this is. I just want to throw out a couple numbers again for everybody who's wondering why we're doing this. There's over 400 projects in the city of Peoria related to stormwater. There's $17 million worth of work that needs to be done. Just like when we raised the revenue for our roads 2 years ago, we were committed that those additional dollars would go to roads and roads only. We have been very clear, transparent, all those adjectives in making people aware of the money that was raised and exactly where that money goes. And I think, I hesitate to ever speak for my colleagues around here, but I would say it's the will of this council that every dollar that is raised through this will also be clearly aligned with these stormwater projects and administration, and it will be clear to people that there is benefit. I know I've had a lot of constituents call me in the years I've been sitting here specifically on stormwater-related issues, and it's always in the 5 years and out in the CIP. So to be able to put that in a realistic time frame and actually begin the work is going to be something I think we can all be proud of. So clearly, I'm a very strong supporter of this and getting this ball rolling. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Riggenbach. I've got Councilmember Jensen and then Councilmember Montalongo. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you. Just to follow up on Councilman Riggenbach's comment, in the interest of being transparent and clear, I know I've asked this before on the council floor when we've discussed this stormwater utility proposal that we're being asked to approve next week. It's not going to cover this initial phase, will not cover the CSO settlement. That's correct, right?
what the stormwater utility fee will cover, it will cover a portion of the maintenance costs of some of the green stormwater infrastructure, like the pilot project on Adams Street that we've done, or
Right.
the Folker Street project. But it's going to be done in conjunction with our sewer rates as we go forward. You have to remember, this cost in total to comply with the Federal Clean Water Act is going to be over $200 million. Then you add into that the additional stormwater costs we have just elsewhere outside of the city. We have those costs. So in order to manage the cost of all of that, we're going to have to be looking at our sewer rates. We're going to have to be looking at the stormwater utility fee in conjunction to be able to manage that and to pay for it all.
So what we're contemplating approving next week, this stormwater utility will cover our current stormwater issues, which include the preliminary CSO work and the pilot projects that we're doing, but it also includes projects across the whole city that aren't related to the CSO.
It will cover our private drainage program that we have in place, that we've had in place for many years. It will cover we have two stormwater projects, one at California in Lindale and one at Oak Cliff Court, that are two stormwater projects that are about $850,000 that are on the list to be done. And I think that Public Works has several smaller stormwater projects that they're looking at trying to pick up within that next year throughout the city. But that's the initial phase, and then we're going to have to continue to go forward with this to start to address that backlog of projects that we laid out for you in, I think it was report back 5-6, I think, in the budget.
So as a follow-up, once and if we reach a settlement with the EPA on the CSO issues, we are going to have to come up with
significant more
additional
funding,
dollars
yes.
to pay for that. And that, my understanding from some comments that were made during our last strategic planning session and what you just alluded to here, is that it may not just come from the stormwater utility.
Correct. It may also come from sewer rates. As we've discussed over the last many years about this, is that we've looked at it and said, we may have to raise our sewer rates in order to cover the construction costs of the CSO and then pay for the maintenance side with a stormwater utility fee.
Okay, and I don't know if that was always clear, because I think I was always under the impression that we were going to pay for the majority of the CSO work with this stormwater utility, that we'd have to come back and raise rates, but that it was primarily going to be paid for with this stormwater utility.
It's a combination of both. There's just no way to cover $250 million worth. We have $50 million of backlogged stormwater projects and $200 million of CSO expense. There's no way to do it without raising significant revenue in order to cover that cost.
Okay. I've got a couple other questions related to this report back in response to Councilman Montalongo's questions. Number 6, I think there's a reference to the Western Avenue Road reconstruction project in response to what CSO projects will be worked on. Is the Western Avenue Road reconstruction project a CSO project?
It is. We're anticipating that Western Avenue is going to be another green pilot project that we can, build in the appropriate CSO green stormwater infrastructure controls and the monitoring and maintenance of that project in order to prove up to the EPA what we're trying to accomplish with that. So, and that's from Lincoln to Adams is the portion of Western that we're talking about.
So, just as a follow-up to that, then the money that we've approved in the capital budget for that project, will that be shifted to the stormwater utility?
You've approved it right now. If you approve the budget next week, it's built into the sewer funds. So what we're anticipating is the creation of an enterprise fund within our stormwater utility revenues and our sewer rates to pay for sewer work and to pay for the stormwater utility work. It will all be in one pot, and that's where that project would come out of those dollars.
And then
We
I'll-
anticipate that we would bond for it to begin with, and then those bonds would, similar to what we would be looking at with any of these other CSO work that we're going to be doing, is we'll probably have a series of bonds that we'll issue to pay for the initial work, and then sewer rates over time would pay for that debt service on all of that work that we would build out. Very similar to what we did with the $40 million sewer renovation project that lasted over 20 years in the central part of the city. So as we started to renovate the existing sewers that we own in the central part of the city.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jensen. I've got Councilmember Montalongo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had just a couple more questions here on, when we start talking about the permeable pavers, could you go over that policy with us here? I have two properties, one Westlake, and right now the owner's thinking that the parking lot's going to be exempt because he has permeable pavers. So, you know, that's one of the things. And second one is we approved a development for Taco Bell on Big Hollow Road, which I believe they've been given a waiver on being able to put in permeable pavers or put in pavers. I don't think it was even described to them what type of paver that they need to put in. So, in fact, I guess they won't be waived from this, or just looking for some clarification.
So things like that, pre-existing conditions, we'll have to go and evaluate that and see what's there, because there's a lot of different types of pavers. And there's that term permeable paver gets thrown around quite a bit. So without knowing what's underneath it, you know, it's hard to say whether it would qualify for the incentive or the credit in this case. So we would need to know how that was constructed before we could really comment on whether or not that would qualify.
So that's why I was trying to look for a definition so that any developer could look at what our policy is for that, and they could probably answer those questions right away, because they'll know what pavers or what's below
They
it.
should
Just
know what type of paver they use, what kind of rock was underneath it, how deep that rock was, so we would have an idea of how much water that could hold as it ran through the pavers.
So I think there, a little bit more definition is probably needed, because I kind of glanced over what is written so far, and I don't think that's probably defined well enough for them, and I think that part would be really important, especially for new construction. If somebody thinks they're going to be waived out of this fee here, and then they're going to start construction here sometime in January, February, between January and July, and then they find out, oh, I didn't comply because they didn't follow a policy that we hadn't put together yet. So that was my couple concerns with a couple properties. My other, I guess, biggest concern right now too, and Councilman Graham alluded to this as well, is the CSO, and we haven't reached an agreement yet, which we've been in talks with the EPA for quite a while now, and I don't know if we're getting the cart before the horse, but what if in the event, I mean, we have a new administration in there which has talked about doing away with the EPA, which I don't know if that gives us a pass or not, but certainly something for us to discuss, and we may not have to fund this. So my concern is funding any projects before, I guess this is more for the city manager and the rest of the council to consider, funding projects, spending money on a revenue stream that might not be needed. So that's my biggest concern with this as well. And I know we have a list of $17 million in projects, and I think, you know, it's an elephant, and we need to take that down a bite at a time, so a budget would be established. So those are my biggest concerns with the overall stormwater utility. So Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Councilman Riggenbach?
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to thank Councilwoman Jensen again for bringing up that fact that what we're passing, what we're going to vote on next week is not going to be the sole funding source for the CSO. That this is a mechanism to deal with stormwater issues, which include the CSO. In report back 5.6, there's quite an extensive list, and as I look at it, and I didn't count it, but it covers all the council districts, well, except District 1, I think only has 1 in it. But there's parking lots, and this issue is throughout the entire city. So I guess what I'm expressing to my constituents is they ask me, well, this is just the first step. Unfortunately, this is just the first step because we've been sued by the EPA to comply with the Clean Water Act, and we've been negotiating for years and years, and as Councilman Gray aptly put, maybe some of us will be here when the settlement is reached. But regardless of that, the step we're being asked to take next week is critical for the infrastructure of our city at so many levels. And I think, again, we as a council are committed to making the city as efficient and cost-effective as possible. So just because we have a stormwater utility, I'm going to be committed to making it as transparent as possible that those costs, those revenues raised, go for these specific costs that we're outlining. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other lights on. Madam Clerk?
We're at new business.
Any new business? Member Riggenbach?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to make sure everybody in the East Bluff is aware that this Thursday night we're having our final East Bluff get-together. This one will be held at the Community Center on Kansas Street. Beginning at 6 o'clock, we're going to have a report back to the citizens of some of the things that we've heard in these last 6 months and outline some of the steps that we as a city has taken to address those concerns. We're going to have some Christmas cookies and a little caroling to boot. So bring your kids. I know some of our staff members will have their kids there too. So we really just want this to be a fun evening as we recap a lot of activity that's taken place specifically in the East Bluff. And I'm sure the manager is going to mention this as well, but Madam Clerk, on the agenda it says next Tuesday's meeting is at 6 p.m., but I understand it is at 5 o'clock. So let's make sure that when that does get corrected.
Yes, sir, we will do that. And when we send out the agenda next week, we will make sure that the email lists it as 5 o'clock, and we'll make special note. It is on the city's calendar that it is at 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For that special note, Councilmember, City Manager, was that the comment you were going to be making?
That was it. That was what I was going to mention, so I appreciate that, Councilman.
Excellent. Any other new business? There being none, we'd be at citizens to address. Madam Clerk?
Yes, we're at citizens' opportunity to address the city council. I don't believe we have any cards, so.
Okay. And do we have an executive session, Madam Clerk?
We do not have an executive session, so we would be at adjournment.
Okay. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Akeson, seconded by Councilmember Montalongo. Cast your ballots. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, and have a good evening.